Okay, it's rap pack to my pulse flat. We keep it real, no false rap. I got 4 cars and they all black. Got 4 bras and they all that. We call that ballin'. Doing this is my calling. Flow is so appalling. My phone off and she calling. I'm like, yeah.
What's going on, internet, and welcome back to Nth-Level Entertainment, the most awesome series, movies, and comic book related YouTube channel in South Africa. I am your host, Z the Entertainer. Now, welcome back to episode 2 of my MCU recap challenge, and today we're going to be reviewing The Incredible Hulk. Now, a lot of Marvel Cinematic Universe fans stand divided about this movie, and the biggest reason for that is because this version of Bruce Banner was played by Edward Norton. Now, Edward Norton, I feel, would have been an excellent choice to actually carry on into the MCU, but it turns out that negotiations between Marvel Studios and his management company actually broke down. It could have had something to do with the fact that maybe he was asking for too much or he had other creative demands that they just couldn't meet. But he ended up being replaced by Mark Ruffalo going forward. Now, this movie was a strange one, in my opinion, because when I watched it, okay, I loved Edward Norton's performance. I think he is the quintessential Bruce Banner in the way that he delivered the acting, and even his physical build as well lended itself more towards the character, making him more accurate a depiction from the comic book version and the animated movies that we've seen thus far. Mark Ruffalo plays the role very well, but I believe that Edward Norton just embodied the role so much more, if for a lot of different reasons. Now, this movie came after Iron Man 1 and was the second installment in the MCU. So this movie opens with Bruce Banner in South America, basically trying to live his life on the run and minding his own business and keeping his head clean and working at a juice manufacturing plant. So while he's doing this, he's simultaneously trying to find a cure for his gamma radiation poisoning. And whilst there, an accident befalls him where, whilst working in the plant, he actually gets cut by one of the machinery and his gamma radiated blood falls into one of the bottles that were being packed with the juice. He obviously does what he can to stop production until he actually finds every trace of blood that did spill and wipe it off. But then some of it ends up in the actual bottle, which leads us to Stan Lee's cameo in this movie, where he actually drinks a bottle of that juice and I think dies of radiation poisoning. So as the movie goes on, this obviously now brings General Ross back into, or rather brings Bruce Banner back into General Ross's radar, and he sends a strike team to go and apprehend him at the plant, which leads to the first Hulk transformation that we see in this movie. Now, this first transformation was shrouded in shadow and darkness and everything. We don't really fully get to see the Hulk in all of his green, angry glory because he's basically taking out the bad guy in a very Batman-like manner. You know, we don't see him fully, but we see the destruction that every movement that he makes causes. So this incident obviously disrupts Bruce Banner's life as he was living it on the run, and he's then now forced to actually go back to the States to meet up with Betty Ross because she had very important information with regards to what he needed to find out in terms of trying to heal his gamma radiation. This, of course, leads to yet another confrontation with General Ross and his army as they find out that he is now in the States. And that causes the first real reveal of the Incredible Hulk. This happens at a college ground, I think, where a lot of students are running around with their phones filming the action as it happens. We are also introduced to Manute Blonsky, aka Abomination, who starts by confronting the Hulk as a human soldier, eventually gets augmented by an experimental copy of the super soldier serum, which transforms Steve Rogers into Captain America as we know him today. This has the same effects as what you would expect from Captain America, but Manute Blonsky actually loses the fight against the Hulk and is obsessed with revenge to actually get him back. So later on, the Hulk is now joined by Betty Ross on the run as he recovers from this most recent transformation. And she now gets a glimpse of what his life was like while he was on the run. All the secrecy and the hiding and, you know, staying on radio silence, no phones because they can track them. And eventually they get to meet up with Dr. Samuel Stearns. Comic book fans will know this person as the leader who he eventually becomes. And he basically tries to help Bruce Banner in completing his cure of the gamma radiation. This, of course, goes awry, and Manute Blonsky and another elite task force eventually track him down at Samuel Stearns' laboratory. Bruce Banner is then abducted in this incident, and taken into General Ross's custody. And then Munu Blonsky forces Samuel Stearns to actually complete his transformation into the Abomination, who is basically an anti-Hulk type figure from the comic books. So this then causes Manute to go on a rampage as the Abomination, and General Ross is forced to ask for Bruce Banner's help in apprehending him by turning into the Hulk and actually fighting him. Basically, now the last confrontation in the third act of the movie, and is also the climax of the movie. And this is where I found this movie to be a bit strange, because what I saw in this fight scene between Abomination and the Incredible Hulk is that the Incredible Hulk seemed to be in a mind space where he wasn't either fully confident or not fully unbridled, having unbridled rage as he normally does, in that he seemed to doubt himself within the fight. We see that in a couple of close-up shots that they showed on the Hulk's face every time the Abomination would actually come back for a further fight with him. But the Hulk eventually does win the fight, and Betty Ross and General Ross are both saved in the confrontation, and he then runs away and basically goes into seclusion like he always does. This is a great movie. The visuals were great. The Hulk CGI was very well done, a lot of detail on the muscle definition and everything. But I didn't like how he was depicted. You know, he seemed to be very forgiving, very unwilling to fight. I don't know if maybe that was the writer's way of trying to show that, you know, the Hulk always just wants to be left alone. You know, that's always the thing that he says every time, you know, the military sets upon him and tries to capture him and all that stuff. As much as he's fighting back and he's destroying stuff in the interim, he's always saying the very same thing: leave Hulk alone. So that could have been the writer's way of trying to show that in the Hulk's performance. But ultimately, it betrays the character in terms of who we know him to be and what he is at his core. He's basically the personification of rage. You know, he's what we were shown in the Ang Lee version of the Hulk is that it's basically based on the history that he has of being abused by his father and him witnessing his father abuse his mother as well. It's repressed anger. And when he finally became the Hulk, thanks to the gamma bomb explosion, he finally had a way to actually vent and unleash all of that anger. And that's what the Hulk ultimately is. It's basically that repressed emotional side of Bruce Banner that gets to be let out when he transforms into the Hulk. But I guess a lot of people will be divisive on that particular opinion. That's just my takeaway from having watched the movie. We also have Liv Tyler in this movie who played the role of Betty Ross. I've always not seen her as the strongest of actors, and this unfortunately was very much in my face during my second viewing of this movie. She wasn't very emotive. She didn't express herself enough, and I mean, Edward Norton did his best to support her in the scenes that he had with her, but ultimately her weakness, if I can call it, as an actor, did still shine through, regardless of that. But this was a great movie. The other criticism that I did have of it is the fact that we didn't see as much destruction as one would expect to see whenever the Hulk is unleashed. All of his incidents were very sort of confined to one area. The Ang Lee version actually showed us how the Hulk can actually jump from one place to another and how unstoppable he is, as he was attacked by a whole squadron of helicopters and fighter jets and all that, and he still basically beat them off until Betty Ross came to his rescue and calmed him down to help him transform back into Bruce Banner. In The Incredible Hulk, we see a lot of action and a lot of fights, but not a lot of destruction as you would expect from The Incredible Hulk. I mean, this is the being that was eventually um, ultimately deported from the world by the Illuminati in the World War Hulk and Planet Hulk storylines in the comics. This movie didn't depict that side of him as well as I would have hoped they would. So, but nonetheless, it was an enjoyable movie. The visuals were great. Edward Norton was great as Bruce Banner, and I like the way that they actually tied it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe by Tony Stark showing up at the, I guess, pre-credit scene at the very end when he actually speaks to General Ross and tells him how the Super Soldier project was a failed experiment and that they were putting a team together. Obviously, he was referring to the Avengers. So I give this movie 3 Hulk thunderclaps out of 5, simply because it wasn't as large a scale as I would have hoped for a Hulk movie to be, and Liv Tyler's performance as Betty Ross. So please, if you've seen this video of mine, let me know what you thought of this movie. Leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you liked this video, please click on the thumbs up icon and leave a like. And if you'd like to see more from Nth-Level Entertainment, please click on subscribe and be sure to click on the bell icon so you are notified every time I drop new content on the channel. Until then, everybody, as usual, I've been Z the Entertainer. Thank you for joining me. Stay awesome, take care of each other, to infinity and beyond.
Hey guys, thanks a lot. If you want to see some more from us, click here or click here.